house needs painting, grass needs mowing, where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Mossy Oak and Liqua Molly.
Welcome to Off the Water with Hank Parker. I'm your co-host, SaraBeth, and you are?
I'm Hank Parker, and it's good to be with you this fine day, SaraBeth.
I'm
excited about another day to do a podcast.
Yeah, it is. Hey, another day, another dollar, as they say.
Oh, man, I don't know about a dollar, maybe a nickel.
You ain't got no dollar, you got nickels?
Dollars are hard to get anymore. I'm fishing for nickels.
Well, we just got back from doing the Outdoor Dream Foundation tournament, and that was probably one of the most rewarding things I have ever been on. I enjoyed that so much, getting to meet those kids and talking with everybody.
It is bittersweet. It is such an awesome opportunity to hang out with these kids, and it's really difficult when you build that bond and that friendship and fall in love with these kids and then have them pass away. It's a tough thing. I've gone through about, I guess I've buried about 14 of the guys I've met and known over the years, and that's not only with the Outdoor Dream Foundation, that was also with Make-A-Wish and Dream Catchers. I work with all of them. Outdoor Dream is where I anchor because they're in Anderson, South Carolina, and for those that don't know the history of the Outdoor Dream Foundation, the Outdoor Dream Foundation is an organization that was built primarily because the Make-A-Wish Foundation stopped doing hunting. And a lot of people are offended by that. I'm not. I love to hunt, and my values are what they are. But I still support the Make-A-Wish Foundation because they take kids that have life-threatening illnesses on their dream, whatever it is, other than hunting. So I'm okay with that. I don't criticize the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I met a young man, Darren Gordon, about 30 years ago. He was 11 or 12 years old when I took Darren, and that was through Make-A-Wish. I took him on a fishing trip, and he and I became awesome friends, and we hunted and fished together for about 12 years before he passed away. And he died in his early 20s with cystic fibrosis. And
wow.
It's painful, but my life was enhanced and blessed because I knew Darren Gordon. So I'm grateful to the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Right.
But Outdoor Dream started because there was a kid in Anderson, South Carolina, who during that process, when the Make-A-Wish Foundation decided not to do hunts anymore, this person was caught in the middle, this kid. And so Brad Jones and Coach Jones, his dad, took it on themselves to make sure that this young man got to live out his dream. And it may have been a young girl now that I think about it, but this young person got to live out their dream of going on that hunt. And they funded that. Well, wow. That kind of led to the second one and the third one and the fourth one. And before you know it, they were up to their eyeballs, so to speak, in request, and so they were funding all this out of their pocket. Now, Coach Jones, if any of you guys have ever seen the television or the movie, and there was also a book and a movie called Radio, where Coach Jones took this young boy that had mental issues, retardation, and took him under his wings and made him a part of the high school football team. And he went to the games with them, and it was just a wonderful story, and it's an absolute true story. That is the same Coach Jones that the book was written about and the movie was about. And Radio was a real person, and he was a part of the Outdoor Dream Foundation until he passed away about 4 years ago now. So it's just a special organization. And what they do is they take kids with life-threatening illnesses, right, on their dream hunt, fishing trip, nature viewing, whatever it is to do with the outdoors, they engage these kids. And unlike any of the other organizations that I'm aware of, I'm not totally aware of all the organizations that are out there. Catch a Dream is another one that's awesome. They do a fantastic job. But the Outdoor Dream, once you're a part of that family, you're in for life. I mean, it's some of these kids have been a part of Outdoor Dream Foundation now for 10 years. And so they have this tournament every year out on Lake Hartwell, which is near their home headquarters. And families come from all over the country. And it is so neat because they can bond like no one else. I mean, if you've got a terminally ill child and you're fighting all these medical procedures and treatments, and it's hard for me to understand that. It's hard for me to understand what they're going through emotionally, mentally, and physically. Man, it's draining. You got to go to this hospital and go take this treatment. And it is such a very difficult thing. And then it just rips your heart out to see your child suffering. But when you bring this mom and this mom and this dad and this dad, they've got similar situations, they bond.
It creates a community, a support group, I guess, for people going through the same thing. You know, this past trip, we had 2 kids with us. We had Carson and Asher. Now, Carson, he was the first kid, and he was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis in the lungs. And God, he was so lively. He was so chatty. And he just talked about Jesus. And that was possibly one of the biggest eye-openers for me. I had asked him what his favorite song was because I was making a post, and I was going to put his favorite song behind it, and he said his favorite song was Revival by Morgan Wallen. And when I actually listened to that song, because I don't really listen to a lot of Morgan Wallen to begin with, but it's a very mature song talking about hardships in life. And I was like, it made me think, I'm like, man, this kid's going through it. He's only 12 years old and he's going through all of this. I couldn't imagine, you know, but it's such a blessing to even get to meet these kids and be around them and see how big they smile and they reel in a bass. And when you're cutting up with them, and you could just tell that they really enjoyed it. And it was Asher's mom. She came up to me and she thanked me on behalf. She said, tell your papa I said thank you too. He said Asher has loved this day. He's loved it so much.
And that's what your objective is. Your objective is, with all the medical issues and with all the treatment and all the negative stuff they have, to do something positive, to give them a happy day where they don't think about treatment, they don't think about their sickness, just a happy day. And that's what my objective is, and that's what the Outdoor Dream Foundation, that's what their objective is. Take their troubles away for a couple of days or a day, whatever you can give and do. And it is very special, and so I encourage everybody to get involved. Not everybody can come, and not everybody can give a day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 of their time, but everybody can make a contribution. And it's such a worthy foundation, and they do such a great job, as well as the Make-A-Wish. I've had a lot of people say, boy, I don't like Make-A-Wish because they don't take it. No. I don't agree with their stance, but I know what happened. With the Make-A-Wish Foundation, one of their largest sponsors said, hey, we're anti-hunting. And if you take these kids on hunting trips, we're going to pull out. And their support is critical. And so that's what happened there. And I'm not down on the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I think they're a wonderful organization. But the Outdoor Dream, there's no boundaries, no limits. If a kid wants to do something, they work hard to make all that happen. Yeah. And it's all about that kid. And so you can object to hunting if you want to, but if that kid wants to go hunting, I'm going hunting with him. I don't play ping pong, but if I got a kid that I can make his life better, I'll try to play ping pong. I don't care. It's about that kid, and so. And that's what the Outdoor Dream Foundation is all about. But it was Coach Jones, and they used a lot of the money and the revenue they got from that movie, and just about used up their complete resources before they got support and fundraising events put into place with the Outdoor Dream. So Coach Jones' son's name is Brad, and Harold and Brad Jones, and they put this thing together along with their wives and their family, made a lot of sacrifices to make a lot of dreams come through for kids, and it's still going on, and it's been going on now for multiple years. I hate to say how many years, but I've been involved for 12 or 13 years or 14 or 15 or 20 or however long it is. Time goes by.
Estimated.
Somewhere in the 19th century we started this thing.
Somewhere in the 1900s, a rough estimate, but
20th century,
it was more though than just a fishing trip. They did a whole tournament, and I wasn't expecting that. Mind you, I had no idea what I was getting into. This was my first ever outing with the Outdoor Dream Foundation, and so I had no idea what to expect. But when we pulled in, they caught some nice fish. I believe the biggest fish of the tournament, one of the kids caught a 17-pound striper.
17-pound 30.
1730. But it was really nice, and the kids and the teams, they all got awarded. So I know that was really special for them. They almost got a glimpse of what it was like if they were to fish like in a bass tournament. And I think it just made it really special. They had like a whole cookout. So they really went above and beyond. It wasn't just, hey, we're just taking these kids out on the water for the day and then boom, you're done. They made a whole event out of it.
One thing, it is expensive. Television's expensive. To sponsor my television show, it takes money. And Ranger Boats and Mercury Outboards and Lew's and Humminbird and Minn Kota and ARC and Berkeley Trilene and all these companies that sponsor my show, they want something fresh. They want something new. They want something exciting. They want something informative about new products, and here's what you need. And, of course, they're obviously in business to sell, and if they don't sell, they can't make it. So I get it. And so a couple of years ago, we were going over our TV schedules, and they said, I think you're doing too much smallmouth up north. I want you to spread it out. I want you to go to Guntersville. I want you to fish more in Florida. I want you to go out west. I want you to do some of these things. And I said, well, every year I do 2 shows. The only 2 shows I do every year, one is for the Boys Farm in Newberry, South Carolina, with orphans, and the other is the Outdoor Dream Foundation tournament. And so they're a little bit redundant, and it's not showcasing your product. And every one of them said, do not stop doing that. We love what you're doing. Take those kids, and we're willing to pay and give our part to support the Outdoor Dream Foundation. So I want to shout out to all my sponsors, because that is pretty selfless.
Selfless. There you go.
I got it right. I always say selfish.
Selfish. I noticed he had said that in a few episodes before, and I was thinking, should I say?
Out on it. She called me out on a lot of things. She called me out on chimney.
I said it in private.
It's chimney.
I said it in private
this time. She didn't know chimney. She called me out, and that's okay. I like being called out. But my grandma, I used to say Monday. She said, Paw. It's not Monday. It's Monday.
I said enunciate.
It's Tuesday. It's Wednesday, not Wednesday, not Monday. It's Monday, Tuesday, and that's true, and that's helped me out. And I sound a little bit like I'm a little bit more uptown, a little more sophisticated when I say Monday instead of Monday.
We enunciate.
Come on, we got it right. So anyway, I'm so thankful for my sponsors for caring and contributing, and they did not want me to change one thing about that tournament. Keep fishing with those kids, and so thank you, Mossy Oak. Thank you, Lew's and Ranger and ARC and Mercury and Minn Kota and Humminbird and Berkeley Trilene and all the guys that work with our team. Liqua Molly, they're on board. They're new, but I know how they feel about kids, so thank you to Liqua Molly as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love seeing it when big companies actually care and they give back like that, because that to me is worth more than a million rod and reels or a million sales, is the fact that you made one impact in a kid's life who's going through such a hard time, that you were able to even make them smile.
We had guys that got trophies, but everybody got a Lew's Rod and Reel combo, American Hero, and the American Hero is another shout out to Lew's, because They escrow a portion of the sales, and they provide rods and reels for a lot of special events for our service people at no charge because of the escrowing of funds for the American Hero Series. So every one of those kids left there with a great spinning rod and reel, American Hero rod and reel from Lou's, and that is a highlight. So we all got free hamburgers and hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
They were good,
you
man.
You cut the line and you didn't realize it. It was a little bit of the behind the scenes here of this day.
Tell on me, SaraBeth. I wasn't going to mention that.
Oh, he was telling everybody for a solid hour, I'm trying to go get me a free hamburger. And he goes straight in the line to kind of look at him. And I guess they weren't going to start yet, but there's Hank Parker making his play as he's going down the line. They're like, all right, let's say the blessing. You're like, oh. Everybody bowed their head.
I thought we got there, and you know, there were a lot of people there, and I was meeting and greeting, and man, I was smelling those hamburgers, and I hadn't eaten any breakfast, and we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We've been out on the water all day, and those hamburgers smelled so good. I thought everybody was eating. I thought it was done. People were sitting under the tent, and I thought, well, you know, they're enjoying a good hamburger. I need to do the same. So when I got up there, I just jumped in line thinking that everybody was eating.
He was ready.
I was first one day.
Oh, yeah, you sure were. Hey.
But it was so innocent. A lot of people do that on purpose. I promise I didn't. I felt really bad. Not too bad there because that hamburger was good.
It was so good.
I broke the line. I
think you deserved it. But speaking of tournament fishing, though, this kind of brings us into our next thing, and I kind of wanted to go a little bit more into the nitty-gritty. Do you think fishing tournaments nowadays are losing their spark or their soul, as you'd say?
Well, I read one of the top pros the other day that said, well, I know nobody likes me, and I'm not the most popular guy in the world, but I'm winning. And I'll cut my mom off. I'll jump my mom's fish to win a tournament. And that's a bad attitude, and I don't like that. There's always been a few people like that in the sport, so it's nothing new. There's probably more of those type attitudes out there now than in the past, but bass fishing has always been a sport of camaraderie, and I tell this story a lot, and I've told it before on podcasts, and it's a little bit redundant, but I'll make it brief. I was fishing on Gunnersville once, and there was a creek that came out into the lake, and that was kind of the stopping point for me, and that was also the stopping point for Bo Dowden. Bo Dowden won the 1980 Bassmaster Classic. Bo Dowden from Louisiana and Texas. He's right there on Toledo Bend. So he's right there on the border. I think he had a marine dealership in Louisiana, but I think his house may actually be in Texas. But nevertheless, Bo's an awesome fisherman. And I was pretty new on the tournament circuit. And as far as bass is concerned, I'd fished American bass and national bass. And I knew the ropes, and I knew the unwritten rules of sportsmanship and how important they are to all of us. But that particular creek where we were turning around was a great spot for me. And every time I'd get to that creek, I'd catch a fish. And most of the time, Bo would be looking in the other direction. And so he never saw me catch a fish there, or at least I didn't think he did. And so I got to that creek as he was coming towards me. He would get right there, and he wouldn't fish into that. He would not cast where I was casting. He would turn around right before he got there. And that's why I didn't want him to see me catch fish, because all he had to do is come on down another 10 or 15 yards, and he's right there in the sweet spot. But it happened, he was coming toward me, and I cast in there, and I caught about a 7-pounder, and he saw me. And I thought, oh, man, there goes my spot now. And so nevertheless, and I had a limit of fish, so I got down in the bottom of the boat, and I started culling. So that is two things that I don't like for other competitors to see me do. You know, a lot of guys, the best place to fish on the lake is where you see somebody with a bent rod. We call it the bent rod pattern. He's got a fish on, so I'll pull in there and fish around him. But nevertheless, as it worked out, Bo never one time cast into that creek. Even after he saw me catch that 7-pounder and he saw me cull and I had a big string of fish and he knew it, he still never cast there. And So when the tournament was over, I went up to him and I said, Bo, I just want to thank you for not casting up into that creek. That was my number one spot for catching a big fish, and I'd let it settle down, and I'd come back to it about 45 minutes later, and I'd catch another fish. But if I just kept fishing it, I didn't get any more bites. So it needed to settle down, and he had the opportunity to cut in there and fish, and he said, no, I saw what was going on. I saw you catch those first three. Well, I didn't even know he saw me catch them. He said, I saw you catch those first three, and I knew that was a good little spot, but I did not fish it in practice, and I had already had my little turnaround point, so I wasn't going to jump your fish. How ethical is that? I mean, how cool is that a guy has that kind of character?
You don't see that anymore, and that's one other thing I was going to go into. The industry's grown really fast. Like, if you look at the industry over the span from the 80s to now, it's blown up relatively huge for a sport.
Let me go back. I'm going to correct you on one thing. You don't see that now with everybody.
Not with
everybody. There are still people that live by that. There are still tournament fishermen that are that ethical. So
I agree.
You don't see it as often. And I'm going to tell you, I was on Lake Murray 2 years ago when I was fishing. I was fishing in the back of a creek. And the fish were breaking a little bit. And it was very narrow. It was only room for one boat, to be completely fair and honest. And had I seen a boat back there, and I have done that in that exact same creek on several occasions, I would want to go there and I'd turn around and go around the bend and there'd be a boat. Yeah. I'd leave every time. I never one time encroached. And so I was down there about 2 years ago, and I was fishing, and a boat came right on top of me. Two guys in the boat, and I said, guys, what are y'all doing? Oh, we didn't realize it was you. Well, what difference does it make who it is? Oh, we would have never done this to you, Hank. Well, you'd have done it to any other fisherman? What is the difference, man? What are you thinking? So I really wanted to know, why are you doing this? Why would you have done this to another fisherman? I mean, it's obvious they had the spot before you did, so it's a public lake, and yes, you can come in on them without violating the law, but you're breaking the principle of sportsmanship. Why would you do this? And they said, well, we watch all these tournaments on TV, and that's the way they do it. And I thought, wow, that is not good. And I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen that. I have seen it some, and I don't like it. And I've seen fishermen have words, and I've seen fishermen get excited one toward the other. And, tournament fishing, competition on any level brings out the best and the worst. It
Any
does.
sort of pressure. There's a lot of pressure.
It is.
Because they're trying to win.
And you can make mistakes, but that is not the way to fish. I don't care if you're who you are, where you at, you're on a public lake. Even if you put the brush pile in, a lot of people feel like, well, I sunk that brush pile, I'm going to go fish it. I don't care if that other boat's sitting on it or not. It's my brush pile. No, it's not your brush pile. When you put a brush pile in a public lake, it becomes a public brush pile. And you don't have the right to go and cut in front of another boat and fish it, or root him out, or infringe on him. You don't have that right. You do legally, but ethically you do not. And so I think that's important. So to go back to what you had asked, I do think that we've let it slip some. Ray Scott was always really, really talking about sportsmanship, being ethical, showing grace to your neighbor. And he iterated that and reiterated that many, 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 many times. I don't know that we have that as much today. I'm not a part of the tournament, so I cannot say for sure. But I do know that it is not what it used to be. And I do know that there is not as much camaraderie. I still work a lot of boat shows. I go to a lot of marine dealerships. I go to a lot of places where a lot of the younger guys are. Excuse me, I'm making noise with my mic. I go to a lot of places where they're gathered. And boy, there is not that. Man, I go see Denny Breyer, we're hugging necks and shaking hands and bumping fists. And I go see Larry Nixon and rolling and dance and all these other guys that I grew up in my generation and I competed against, and it's like coming to a family reunion. And it's always been that way. It's not that way because we're all retired and we're on the other side of our careers. It's always been that way. I was that way right in the middle of the competition. I love to go see all these guys, Ricky Green and Larry and Tommy Martin and Denny and on down the line. I mean, 100 of these guys, and it was camaraderie. I don't see that.
No, and I think a lot of that has to do, well, your competitive tournament fishermen, they are setting the example for everybody else. So they see them do it, they think, oh, okay, so then that's how it should be. But what you don't realize is that they've got so much pressure put on them, and I know that mindset is probably very easy to lose your morals, especially when there's so much hanging in the balance. I've got to win this. I've got to do this. I don't care if this cuts out this other guy's opportunity, if it lets me win this competition, because then that's everything I've worked for. So I can see how easy it is to kind of get into that mindset. But you got to remember, the Bible says, do unto others as you would have them do to you. And
that's good to live by. The Bible is definitely the best book there is to live by. And it is the word of our Creator. And it is the perfect word to live by, and that's good advice. And I mean, truthfully, you want to do that. I know I'm in a NASCAR. I still watch NASCAR racing, and there's some young guys out there that will drive through you to get to the front. And there is an unwritten rule, and most of the guys out there that'll drive you clean. If you drive them dirty, they're going to drive you dirty.
Yeah.
They're going, and that's kind of the way I was when I fished. If I know that there was a guy out there, I had a good friend of mine, and he was not ethical, man. He would jump your fish in a heartbeat. So I would pay him back. I would have an opportunity, and I'd pay him back. And sometimes we'd come to the weigh, and he said, Parker, why'd you come in on my fish? You knew I was in there. I said, let me tell you why I did it. Because that's what you did to me at Kentucky Lake, and I wanted you to see how it feels. Quit doing that to me, and I'll quit doing that to you. But I let it go 2 or 3 times, and when I was in Kentucky Lake, you just rooted me completely out. I'm not going to have it. And so I came in on you. I didn't really need to, but I did because I wanted you to see how it felt. Don't do that to me anymore, and I'll never do that to you again. But I kind of the same unwritten rule in fishing. That's the unwritten rule in racing. You drive me rough, and I'm going to drive you rough. You jump my fish, and I will not respect your fish. So come on, let's work together, and let me show you how it feels, and let's make a truce from this point forward. Yeah. If you don't jump my fish, I'll never jump yours. I'll never infringe in your water. But as long as you do that to me, I'm going to let you know I'm going to fish you just like you fish me.
Going into the next thing, some anglers have said that it's not about the love of fishing anymore in the big tournaments. They say it's about online clout or online reputation of, what they can be viewed as getting attention, I guess, online attention.
Yeah, we all have egos, and I wish I didn't have any ego at all, but we all do, and we're human, and that ego is a bad thing. Ego is bad all the way around. Our church service yesterday, we had a wonderful message, but it talked about a guy that was the wisest guy in the whole community, and he didn't have a mentor. He didn't have anybody he could ask because his questions were deep, and there was nobody in his community that could ask it. And he heard about this man that had this incredible wisdom. And so he traveled to go to that and made a journey to go to this hut where this guy that was wise that could answer his questions. And so he got there and he met him and he said, "Can you answer my questions?" He said, "Yes. But before I answer them, I want you to go to this graveyard and I want you to praise every grave that is in the graveyard." And so he did, and he came back and he said, "Did you praise everybody in that graveyard?" And he said, "I did." He said, "Okay." And he said, "Okay, now that I've done that, can you answer my questions?" He said, "Well, let me get you to go back to that same graveyard, and I want you to curse every grave that's in that graveyard." And before he got to there, he said, "Let me tell you, you praised every grave." He said, "I did." He said, "What did you hear?" And he pondered that for a minute. He thought, God, I was supposed to hear something. But he said, "I got to be honest, I didn't hear anything." He said, "Okay, all right. I want you to go back to that graveyard, and I want you to curse every grave." And so he went back, and he came back to the wise man, and he said, "I did what you asked. Now can you answer my questions?" He said, "Before I do, what did you hear when you cursed every grave?" He said, "Well, I didn't hear anything." He said, "That's where we need to be." Jesus never accepted the praise of man, and he never accepted the criticism of man. It never affected him at all. His reward was not praise from man. His reward or his downfall was not from condemnation or bad things that people said about him. He lived to serve God.
Right.
And if we could all come to that point, bury those egos where no matter what good people said, you let it run off like water on a duck's back. No matter what bad people said or think people said bad about you, you let it not affect you. You live your life to serve God.
Right.
And that's where we all need to be a good servant of the Lord, is not get blown up when people praise you for being such a wonderful person, or not get so down when people curse you for being such an awful person. It doesn't matter. We're serving God, and we're going to keep on being faithful regardless of praise or criticism, because our reward truly is not from man.
Right. Humble yourself, because I mean, a lot of those things, if your heart's in it, is God's opened that door for you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all the praise goes to him.
And that's where we're lacking. And that's where this ego, and that's where this whole new, and it's not only in fishing. If you look at the celebration that takes place in the end zone after a guy scores, and to me, let me tell you, if you're the running back or you're the quarterback and you get in the end zone and you score and you dance and you turn double back flips and you get the praise and all the crowd's cheering, and what about that big offensive lineman out there that weighed 350 pounds that's working in the trenches that just, man, he's dying. He's killing himself to block for you. He gets no praise or no credit. I'd love to see one time that guy, that running back, made it into the end zone. Instead of him dancing and taking all the credit, I'd love to go see him pick up that big old 300-pound offensive lineman and hug his neck and hand him the ball and say thank you. But they never get the offensive line, the defensive line, rarely ever get any praise.
Yeah, that's where they say take one for the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team, and that's the kind of attitude that I would like to see displayed in the NFL or college football. Let's let the superstars go back and pay tribute to the guy that got them. Hey, if he didn't block, you're in trouble.
Right.
No matter how great a quarterback you are, if you don't have an offensive line that can block for you, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. You're going to get taken out.
So let's show a little gratitude.
Right.
And that's where we are in fishing. You got to realize that if you're a professional bass fisherman, you are setting the precedence for a lot of reaction from people on down the line. So have a little humility and take it to on yourself to make the sport a better sport.
Right. And, you know, I think events like the Outdoor Dream Foundation puts all that back into perspective of really where the love of fishing comes from. Because here you got a little kid who has had maybe nothing but negative news for the past however many months or years. All they're looking forward to is going out on the boat for 5 or 6 hours just to go catch a fish. You know, they don't care about the tournaments and all that other stuff. They just care about reeling in that rod and reel and getting a fish. And wow, look at that! Look at what I caught. Yeah,
and that's it's important to maintain that. I will tell you this: a lot of people say, "Why do you have competitive fishing to begin with?" I don't know how it is and why it is, but when you're a little kid, you always want to catch more than your brother. And when you catch one bigger than your brother or catch one bigger than your sister, you want to brag about it. It's just a thing about fishing. I don't know. So fishing is competitive whether we like it or not.
Sure
And
is.
Organized competitive fishing has come a long way, and I'm all about it. But it's not what fishing's all about. Fishing's all about what you're just talking about. It's going out there with the kids from the Outdoor Dream Foundation and making them have a better day and brag on their 2-pound fish as if it weighed 22 pounds and just be happy and make it fun. And the one thing that I've noticed about fishing, if you're 2 years old or 92 years old, when you catch a fish, you smile. And these kids smile when they're not feeling well. I've had different kids that are going through treatment, and they have to wear sunscreen that is an inch thick, and it's hot, and it's not their body is not healthy, and it's a strain for them to even be there.
Right.
And but yet it makes them smile. When they catch a fish, they're going through a tough time.
Through all that,
but it makes them smile.
Yeah, the first day that we were out there, we had Carson, and I was drinking an Alani energy drink. And they're supposed to be, they're better for you with 0 sugar. Anyways, he looks at me, he goes, can I have one of those? I looked at his dad because I was like, first of all, I was like, I didn't know what his diagnosis was at that point. I'm like, if you have some heart condition, I'm not about to give you an energy drink and that be on me. And anyways, his dad said, yeah, it's okay. And when I say he sat there and sipped on that thing like he was the coolest cat in the boat, and he asked his dad about 3 different times, Daddy, don't tell Mama. Daddy, please don't tell Mama that I had this energy drink. But
corrupting my little
But
buddies.
even still, it's like, we had all the snacks and the drinks, and they were just having a good time.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. Fishing is about camaraderie. Fishing is about sharing. Fishing is about the experience, and highlighting that experience. A lot of people love to travel and go to Europe and see all these 300, 400, 500, 10th century, 20th century old buildings and art. I'd rather see a bobber go under. I'd rather catch a fish. I'd rather be out on the lake than to go to the Michelangelo Museum. But I appreciate all his work, but I don't care about being there. I care about being out on the water and experiencing that. And to me, it's just a highlight to get to go every time I get to go.
Right. Well, moving into our next little section, I've got some questions for you.
All right, questions. Here we go.
All right. What has changed the most in the last 10 years, in your opinion?
Technology. Technology is, in the last 10 years, has gone from a spark to a bonfire. I mean, it is unbelievable, all the advancements that has been made in every way. I've got a Ranger boat that has a Ranger ride system. You turn your boat on with a fob, and that Ranger ride system goes through everything on your boat. If there is a fuse, if there is something that's not functioning, if your steering fluid is low, it's an alert thing. You push the button and it tells you you're low on fuel, you're low on steering fluid, your fuse to your live well is blown. Whatever, you need to reset this or that. Golly bum, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I used to spend an hour looking for inline fuses to figure out why my bilge pumped. Now I got a ride system up there, and I just pushed a little. I don't even have to push the button. The alert comes on. When I push the alert button, it tells me what the problem is.
Back in the day, you were trying to diagnose it yourself. You're just starting your boat with a prayer, hoping everything's still in check.
And that's just one. I mean, you got the maps on the unbelievable. You used to get out there and unfold maps and start trying to figure out on a paper map on a rainy day where a certain drop-off or a ledge or a long point extended out into the lake. Now it's right there on
your screen.
On my screen, on my little Humminbird, and it shows me exactly where that little sweet spot is. And I can run a little icon over there and push it and make a waypoint, and then I can go to, and I can go to the spot.
Go straight to that,
I used to ride around in circles and hold that map up and look at that depth finder and think, okay, yep, I'm getting close. Now I get there in 5 seconds and be right on the sweet spot.
A lot easier, isn't it?
It's crazy. It is just crazy technology. But I'm going to tell you this. They're not building lakes like they were when I was a teenager. there were a lot of new lakes. Corps of Engineers were building lakes all over the country. So you had a lot of new lakes. You had a lot of places you could go and catch fish. And today, we're not getting new lakes, and there's more and more and more people fishing. So all this technology is helping you to be able to keep up and be able to catch fish as good as you used to catch them. But if you didn't have all this technology, you got to lower your expectations on what you're going to catch, because it's a lot to it. But all that technology has been an advancement that has helped me catch a lot of fish.
That's pretty cool. Next question. What does respecting the sport mean anymore?
Respecting the sport?
Yeah. What do you think that means nowadays versus what it did?
Well, I think it's what we talked about a little bit earlier. I think you got to understand that you're held, if you're a high-profile bass fisherman, a tournament fisherman, or a television host, you're held to a higher standard, and you've got to be able to pass that on, what respect really is. It's like I gave the example of Bo Dowden turning around. He respected me, and he was a great sportsman. It was like the guy I told you about when I was at Lake Murray that came in the back of the cove that got on top of me because I was fishing where he wanted to fish, and he disregarded the fact that I was there first, so he disrespected me by coming in on my water. So that was disrespect versus respect. So always be a good sportsman, always do the right thing. And if there's a guy on a brush pile, even though you sunk the brush pile, as I was talking about earlier, it's not your brush pile, it's a public lake. And if he was there first, you got to respect that. And I think we're lacking on that somewhat. I think we need to get back to the basics of being a good guy, of being cutting people some slack and showing some grace and being fair. You won't. What did you say the Bible says? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you?
Yes.
Come on. You're in the back of that cove. You don't want somebody pulling back there on you. Why would you pull back there on them? Yeah. That's what sportsmanship means.
I think it's just people put themselves first, or they're very self-centered. Whatever is about me, whatever I can get to help myself. But anyways, we can go into that all day.
Well, but you notice I said I wish I wasn't like that. I wish I had no ego at all. I wish I could just completely die to self. And that's a challenge to do, but I try. But I'm miserable at it. I don't do a good job.
Well,
but I'd like to just completely die to self and not ever be selfish.
A lot of that, though, too, is age and experience. I think the more you can learn things as you're younger underneath that aspect, that's why we have the older generation, is we learn from them. We learn from the old people. Don't disregard the old people.
No, don't disregard me.
Yeah, I'm just saying you can learn a lot, and I've heard a lot. Oh man, if only I knew this core principle when I was your age, my life would have looked so much more different, or I would have done a whole lot more good. So I feel like it's important to pass that down, whether you're 85 years old or whether you're 25 years old. There's still time for you to apply those principles in your life. It's not too late. You don't have to be set in your ways.
Friends are so important, and if you want to have a friend, you got to be a friend. And so if you treat everybody in a friendly way, you're going to have lots of friends.
All right, there you go. All right, next question. You've been talking a lot about rods and reels. And if I could only afford one or two rods and reels, what should I get to go bass fishing?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I work with Luz, and we worked really, really hard to come up with a rod that's available at Walmart that is an IM6 graphite, which is a high-quality graphite with great guides, a really, really great rod at a great value. Same with the reel. We've matched them up both in spinning and in casting. And it is a real challenge because a worm rod, you want a worm rod to be a really stiff rod with a lot of backbone for setting a hook. You want a crankbait rod to be a lot softer than that and have a little bit more tip to be able, where that fish can't load that rod and throw it, and where that rod will bend enough to absorb some of the shock if you're fishing with light line.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting there and you've got rod designers and engineers that you're working with, and you just keep doing it over and over again. Well, it's too stiff. Well, it's not stiff enough. Or well, it's a little parabolic. I need a little bit more tip. I need to make it 70% butt and 30% tip, and you just keep working and working and working. And I think it's amazing what the guys at Lew's have done. And I will say this, their Lew's rods are probably the best rods in the entire world. And they don't get credit for that. Everybody's buying their reels, they know that, but the rods are unbelievable. And they should have the best rods in the world because they've got the best fishermen in the world, and they've got the great engineers that listen to the fishermen. So you look at Hackney's rods, Greg Hackney, just unbelievable for fishing a frog, for flipping. You look at Andy Montgomery's rods for skipping under boat docks, and you match them up with the shallow spool reel. There's just so much technology that Lew's has access to, and then they've got the capability of building anything in the world. So they should have the best rods and reels. And when I worked with their engineers on designing these rods for Walmart, we had to get it where realizing the person that buys this rod and reel combination is probably not going to buy a dozen different models. He's going to have one or two rods and reels total.
Yeah.
So now let's design a rod that will fish any bait that there is, whatever he buys, whether it be a crankbait, whether it be a sinking worm, whether it be a jig, whether it be a spinnerbait. So I will be the first one to tell you there's somewhat of a compromise. There's a trade-off. It's going to be a little bit too stiff for that crankbait, and it's going to be a little bit too soft for that plastic worm. But all in all, it will work.
Yeah.
You can fish anything with the Hank Parker signature rod and reel available at Walmart.
So you made it as diverse as possible. So
as diverse as possible. And there is some compromise. I couldn't do it if you said, all right, Hank, I want you to go out and be the same fisherman you are today, but I only want you to have one rod. I couldn't do it.
You couldn't?
No. I don't think Tiger Wood, as good as Tiger Woods was in his prime, could take one golf club and be competitive.
Well, you can't build a house with just a drill and nails, you know what I mean?
Can't.
You gotta have multiple
That's
tools.
where I messed up. I had a hammer. My brother says when I build a house, I don't need the hammer, I just need the claw, because I end up pulling more nails. I drive them, bend them. I'm terrible, but you're right. You got to have the whole material to build a house, but you can have an enjoyable fishing experience with a rod that has the range of a crankbait to a plastic worm to a spinnerbait to a jig and spoon to whatever you want to fish. It will do the job. It won't be absolutely perfect, but it's a great compromise to be able to do it all.
Well, speaking of tools and selection, that leads us into our next question. In the past, you've talked about how to select the right fishing line, but it seems overly complicated. Can you simplify what you meant?
I do. I get too complicated sometimes when I talk about XT and XL and fluorocarbon versus monofilament versus braid and super lines and the new Forward, which is an awesome line. It is a lot to talk about, but I'm going to make it real simple. If you're fishing something top water, flipping or spinner baits, I like a line that stretches, so I'm going to go with monofilament.
Right.
If I'm fishing deep, I'm fishing plastic worms. If I'm fishing jerk baits, I want a line that's very neutral, doesn't float or sink, so I'm going to be fishing fluorocarbon. If I'm fishing in heavy aquatic vegetation like lily pads or grass, eelgrass, hydrilla, milfoil, I want a braided line. So that is as simple as I know how to make it. If I want some stretch, I'm going to fish monofilament.
Okay.
If I want to hook up direct and I want a bait that doesn't, a line that doesn't float my bait up, I want fluorocarbon. If I'm fishing in heavy grass or aquatic vegetation, not education. If I had more education, I wouldn't get vegetation mixed up.
There you go.
That's okay. I want a braided line. Braid will cut through it. People say, well, why is that? You hook a fish back in some lily pads with monofilament line that wraps around that lily pad, you're done. You're either going to pull that fish off or you're going to go get him, because that monofilament is going to cut into it, but it's not going to cut it in two. Whereas if you hook him and you've got braided line, that braided line will cut that lily pad like a weed eater cuts grass. So it makes all the difference in the world. You throw way back in real shallow water where you can't get your boat to with monofilament, and you hook a big bass on a frog, you're done. But with braided line, it cut his way out, and you'll get him in the boat, even though you can't get to him. So, those are the simple principles for spinner baits, flipping, topwater baits. I want monofilament for fishing deep, fishing with a shaky head, a worm, a jerk bait, something of that nature. I want fluorocarbon. Fishing in the aquatic vegetation, I want braid.
All right. Well, then that leads us into our last question that I have is, can you clarify where you stand now on Forward Facing Sonar? There's been a little bit of confusion. I think people still don't fully get the message, and there's been more stuff that's come out about it. So where do you stand now? Do you still stand by what you said?
I'm going to go back and tell everybody, we ask people for questions. And this is the last question, is where do I stand on Forward Facing Sonar?
Yeah.
If the truth was known, about 80% of our questions have something to do with Forward Facing Sonar. And there's probably about 50-50 as far as positive versus negative. So where do I personally stand on Forward Facing Sonar? Now, I have friends, good friends, that are going to completely, totally disagree with me and think that I have violated the cardinal sin. And I have friends that are going to pat me on the back. So I'm as neutral as anybody can be on where we should go with this whole idea of technology and the future of professional fishing. I don't know the answer to it. I really don't know the answer. I don't think we're going to change technology. I don't think we're going to go back to fishing with paddles. I think we're going to use trolling motors. I don't think we're going to go back to a brick on a piece of mason cord to test the depth of the water. I think we're going to use depth finders. I don't think we're going to change any of that. And I don't think we're going to change forward-facing sonar technology. I don't think we are. I don't think we can regulate. I don't think we can make rules and laws that are going to change the fact that it exists and it's an important part of where fishing is today. Is it messing up fishing? In some ways, yes. Is it changing fishing? In all ways. It is rearranging fishing. Is that fun? Never is. Never is. Older people don't like change at all, and I'm one of them. But it is there, so you have a choice. You can either sit on the sideline and fuss, or you can accept it, or you can embrace it. Those are your choices. And I'm going to tell you from what I've been seeing lately, if you don't embrace it, you're going to lower your expectations on what you're going to be catching in the future. And you're probably going to be getting your hiney kicked by some of these younger guys if they don't outlaw it in the tournaments. It is a game changer. There's no doubt about it. It is a game changer. For me personally, and I've said this from the start, and everybody says, you've changed your mind, you've crawfished, you're taking a different stance than what you originally stood for. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I will say I feel differently than I first did because I've learned a lot. But I've always said from the very beginning, I like fishing with it simply because it's something new and a challenge, and it is a game changer. And I'm not good at it. And that frustrates me that I'm not good at it. And I really want to get better. Matter of fact, last week I did a television show up in Illinois, in a strip pit, and I had the most success I'd ever had with Forward Facing Sonar. And I watched them and I showed it on, and I loved it. It was just such a thrill to me because I've been so bad at it, and now I'm finally getting it, and it's coming to me, and I'm getting better at it. So I like that. But I don't know the answer to how far we're going, how extreme this may get, and how it may completely obsolete all types of fishing other than using Forward Facing Sonar to locate and catch fish. I don't know that. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you where we are. We're at a point that you're almost too far to turn back now.
Yeah.
You're almost at a point of no return. So I don't know. I don't know the answer for tournaments. I know that NPFL.
Yeah, NPFL. That's it.
I know they're not allowing it, and I've enjoyed their tournaments. I've really enjoyed their tournaments, and they don't allow it. I like watching. We had a little computer glitch there. We were talking about the NPFL doesn't allow Forward Facing Sonar. I don't think they allow 360.
No.
They have some restrictions on all the new electronics. Don't know exactly what it is, but I know for sure Forward Facing Sonar is not allowed. And I've enjoyed those tournaments very much. I also enjoyed. I watched the Elite on Lake Fork in Texas catching a giant bagfish. I enjoyed that. It was a little different twist. So I just love it all. But I think for those who think professional fishermen should not be able to use Forward Facing Sonar, I think the NPFL is the way to go. And I think that's a great organization. I think they're doing a good job. So.
I think that adds more variety. I think it gives people who want to see without it kind of appeases both parties, I guess I'd say. So people that don't want to watch Forward Facing Sonar, they can go watch that one. So you have your different varieties for people to watch, and I think that is probably the only change that we're really going to see. Is just they're going to cater, okay, well, here's your own league.
Well, Major League Fishing's got some restrictions on it. I think bass is pretty much wide open to do whatever they want to do, and I think NPFL has restrictions of not to use it at all. So it's a variety out there, and so you can pick and choose. You got a menu now that you didn't have earlier before the NPFL came along. You pretty much had to do what bass or FLW or Major League Fishing was doing, and now you got a choice. So do with it what you want. And I don't know what's best for the sport. I want these high school kids to get grounded in the basic fundamentals. I want them to understand fish and methods and technique. And I think only knowing Forward Facing Sonar, that's it. I think that's a mistake. So I want to be able to make sure that the development for fishing is well-rounded, and I think there needs to be some kind of limitation on how much Forward Facing Sonar goes into it. And it may regulate itself. These fish are wising up. It may not be a factor. The further along we go, the harder they are to catch now with it. They're a lot harder. Like I say, I'm not good at it, but I can see now, boy, I tell you, it's a lot of stuff that I've learned from it, and I've learned they're not as aggressive toward that little minnow bait as they were a year ago or 2 years ago. So it may work itself out as time goes on.
Right. Well, with all that being said, I want to thank Liquimolly and I want to thank Mossy Oak, our sponsors of our podcast for today. And hey, we're on our 40th year running Outdoor Magazine, and you can go and view it now on Pursuit Up channel or the Pursuit Up streaming app. You can just go to the App Store on either Samsung or Apple, and it also comes free on all Vizio TVs, correct?
That's right.
It's already pre-downloaded,
yeah,
so right. you can go and view that completely free and go see our shows now.
Hey, come on. We got it going on. Hey, thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you and see you hopefully next week. And thank you for being here. God bless you. I'm Hank Parker.